What is infrastructure? So infrastructure is a lot of things. This diagram on the right, I certainly relate to. I've been in many data centers over my many years, and it's always amazing to me that they look so amazing with all this equipment and so on. But these days a lot of infrastructure is virtual. You don't really walk around the data center, but behind the scenes is there. It's all of the when we talk about hardware, sorry, infrastructure, we're talking about all of the hardware, software, networks, facilities that are required to develop, test, deliver, monitor, control, or support IT services. There's one category that I don't see here that is maybe gray zone, which would be the tools themselves. Is that infrastructure? It's certainly not process or or people. It's technology. So I could leave it up to you. Do you think that's infrastructure or not? It's not that critical, but a lot of the same points apply to the tools as well. So the term IT infrastructure includes all of the information technology, but not people, processes, or documentation. That's according to the ITIL Foundation version 4. It's basically everything that happens on a computer depends on the infrastructure. So all of the different CI/CD processes, for example, they don't run in space. They do require something to work with. So systems, the networks, the computing nodes, the data storage, and anything interconnecting or protecting systems from a hardware point of view would definitely be considered infrastructure. It also includes the management of those things, so systems management, storage management, network management. So all the management capabilities built around those things would also be considered part of the infrastructure. There's a lot of elements of infrastructure. We just talked about some. BMC defines infrastructure as components that support IT service delivery. So that includes things like the power, electrical services, uninterrupted power supplies, generators, things that are physically required to make the equipment work and to be sustained. All the telecommunications cabling and wireless services that are needed. Switches, that could be electrical switches, but it also can be communication switches, or things like things, backup routers and stuff like that. Routers themselves, so routing traffic. Firewalls, infrastructure security around firewalls could be considered part of the infrastructure. The servers for running, tasks, executing, taking on work. Server rooms themselves, the actual physical room, the data center itself could be considered part of the infrastructure. Cloud infrastructure, if you're using a public cloud, that's could be included as what you consider your infrastructure, even if you hire it out, over a network. Different service components. So there could be components of all of the above: firmware, operating systems, applications. So maybe that also could include some of the tools, configuration and updates, user provisioning. So the point is that there's an awful lot of stuff. We use this word infrastructure kind of lightly sometimes, but the reality is there are many elements that we consider part of infrastructure, and every one of these things are potential security attack surfaces or different kinds of attacks. So from a security point of view, this is really super important to understand your infrastructure and what the attack surfaces are, the risks and threats. Certainly good infrastructure provides a positive customer experience, meaning you can access it and use it hopefully seamlessly with high availability. You use it to, develop and launch solutions, even ephemerally, if not, persistent solutions. In a DevOps pipeline, for example, you have a lot of times when you're just going to set up some infrastructure to run some build or some test and then release it when you don't need it anymore. But all of that has to work. Collecting data for helping to make decisions, for example, usability or use, utilization. Maybe you need to grow infrastructure to keep performance up. Generally speaking, it affects productivity. If you don't have enough infrastructure to support your teams, that can slow things down because there'll be lots of delays. And on the other hand, if you have too much, it can be expensive. So always looking at the performance and productivity aspects is important with infrastructure. Some bad practices, if you have repeated real-time delays, maybe you don't have enough infrastructure, or the infrastructure you have is not provisioned well enough. It may be difficult to map and launch solutions if you don't have easy ways of doing that through different applications, hypervisors or other tools to stand up infrastructure on a demand basis. It could be challenging to collect meaningful data if you don't have the observability built into the different aspects of your infrastructure. And it can also decrease production if you've got bottlenecks or interruptions in infrastructure. So infrastructure is really, really important, and it covers a great deal of ground. People that are, using CI/CD may not even realize how much is behind the scenes in the infrastructure, but it definitely, all of it matters. How can you optimize infrastructure? Well, that's a good point. There's a lot of stuff. It's expensive. And it's also, a potential source of delays for people. So costs are important in terms of time, as well as, literal cost, cost of equipment, capital costs, expense type costs as well. So first of all, you really need to understand what your goals are, right? If you have a specific goals, let's say to have releases out at a certain lead time or something, your infrastructure needs to match the cadence of the release frequencies, and also needs to match whatever you set as goals for things like performance and availability. You may need to have some things replicated to meet availability targets. You can have sometimes replication through physical infrastructure duplications or virtual environments. You can have mirrored input production to the maximum extent. So if you want to do testing prior to a release that mimics what the production environment is going to look like, you're going to be able to need to stand up, an infrastructure internally, or at least prior to release that does that. It needs to be, cost managed, so lowest cost and lightweight as much as possible, but sufficiently, sufficient to do whatever you need to do. At the hardware level, there's, like I said in the last slide, there's a lot of under the hood things that a lot of software folks tend to take for granted, but it's real, the batteries, the electrical, the displays, peripherals, cables, charging ports, whatever, all the different hardware elements that make physical infrastructure function. And then on top of that, layering operating systems, the applications, of course, any base image. If it's a containerized image, I'm not sure what they mean by base badge. I don't know what that one is. Okay, but and again, infrastructure applies at wide area networks, all the parts to communicate across networks. Virtualization, let's say VMware or other virtualization strategies. Trying to or zero downtime. Well, zero is practically impossible, but you want to have very low downtime, very high availability. Secured data access and availability. So the layers of security on top of the infrastructure you're using. You want to have quick response, so low latency. And storage, you want to have quick response again, and high performance storage. So these are some of the things to consider